I'm excited to welcome you to this episode of the Humanitarian and Development Conversation series. And today we will continue our discussion on navigating leadership within the humanitarian and development sector. We've been talking about balancing the technical and interpersonal skills. Just to give you a brief recap, in the last episode, we spoke about the difference between leadership and management, the challenges of new leaders, challenges that new leaders that step up to management roles experience and how to prepare for management roles, how to prepare for leadership, and how to navigate in between that and prevent those challenges. And we've been getting deep insights from our guest speakers, Pharmacist Moses Ogenyi and Rachel Sabo. I know you should be familiar with them by now, but in case you are joining us for the first time, let me introduce them again. So Rachel DeSabo is an experienced senior manager in the humanitarian and development sector who brings clarity to chaos, cohesion to multidisciplinary teams, and heart to high pressure work. With over 13 years of experience managing people and different programs and people from different careers. She has managed large scale operations and implemented projects in different parts of the world. She has even led a cross-cultural team residing on 6 continents. And prior to joining the humanitarian sector, she has led international teams in the private sector in the field of technology. So whether it's the humanitarian or private sector, Rachel practices a collaborative, result-oriented approach to leadership and management. Once more, Rachel Bisabo, we are happy to have you on this conversation series, and you are welcome. And Pharmacist Ogenyi, he is a trained pharmacist, a humanitarian professional, and a leadership coach. He is a passionate people development strategist, a licensed pharmacist with cross-sector experience in humanitarian aid, healthcare systems, and community transformation. And he currently serves as the visionary leader of the Giltop Consult, a people development and educational consultancy firm that is committed to raising value-driven leaders and resilient families. He is passionate about raising leaders. We are happy to have you, Pharmacist Moses, and welcome to the conversation series once again. So we are going to continue the conversation with our two outstanding speakers that they bring their unique voice to the conversation of leadership and sharing from their experiences. And they gave us deep insights the last time. And today we are going to go a step further and we'll be focusing on emotional intelligence in leadership and management. Emotional intelligence in leadership and management. So to begin this conversation today, I would like to start by asking Pharmacist Moses, what is emotional intelligence and why is it crucial in leadership and management within the humanitarian and development sector?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us again, and thank you for this very important question. Emotional intelligence is a big deal in the humanitarian space because we are managing people and we are working under conditions that are very constraining, very dynamic, very unpredictable at times. And to effectively get the results we desire, to provide the much needed interventions to all the different vulnerable communities we serve, wherever we are in the world, at whatever level, there has to be connection. That connection comes on the basis of trust. Trust is very expensive. So emotional intelligence, simply put, is the ability to understand and manage your emotion as a person, And that doesn't just stop with you, translating that to understanding the emotion of other people as a way to promote growth, collaboration, and trust. So, understanding my emotions and managing them appropriately, and doing same for others, recognizing how others will feel if I should say something the way I say it or do something the way I do it. That is this, in simple terms, what emotional intelligence is all about. So understanding and managing my emotions, and then translating that to how I relate with others. There are just five basic components, and looking at it, there's the self-awareness aspect of asking myself, who am I? What are my strengths? What turns me on and off in terms of my relationship with people, relationally now, and understanding that is very important to help us know, okay, how do I regulate my emotions? Sometimes some people raise their voice when they speak at other people unknowingly. They don't even know, they are not even aware. But self-awareness help you get feedback, help you know the kind of a person you are and how others perceive your action. Intentions can be very well meaning, very sincere, but they can the perception can be wrong. And because we work in multicultural context, yeah, it makes it more dramatic and more challenging, because context differs, and when you're in a new context, you need to have some cultural sensitivity, cultural intelligence, which is also part of what emotional intelligence is all about. So it's simply understanding and managing our emotions, and then using that to help promote growth, collaboration, and trust in the way we relate with other people. And this involves your self-awareness, self-regulation. It also involves motivation, empathy, and social skills, the skills that help you connect effectively. I see it as a bridge builder, as a connective tissue, as one of the ways you effectively earn the trust of people, when they see that you are not just giving command and control, but you are appealing to their heart. It helps to bond the team, it helps stakeholders, it helps the community, it helps partners to understand that this is the way we are going, and then it's easy for people to follow you when you can connect with them emotionally. I think I've said too much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. That was a very clear and simple, made easy definition of emotional intelligence and examples and key highlights that you have given us there. Thank you very much, sir. Now, moving to the next part of the conversation, which I would want Rachel to give us insight on that. How can a leader develop and enhance their emotional intelligence? How do I build my emotional intelligence as a manager?
Thank you so much for that question. And Moses, thank you so much for what you just said, because that is perfect. um, uh, yeah, I'm almost weeping as I think about this. So, how one moves into leadership with all of this emotional intelligence, including self-awareness, including relationships, and how to regulate themselves, you start to think about the other. Leadership is the act of influencing and leading others. And to me, there's a huge component of human motivation in this. What does my team member need? What do they want? What are they trying to achieve? Full disclosure, I was an actor in my first life. and the whole process of developing a character is to kind of step into the psychology of the person you're playing. And that's something that I brought into the trust and safety work that I did for online platforms or community engagement with online platforms. It's what I bring to the humanitarian sector. Understanding where your team member is coming from by watching how they self-regulate, watching how they react, trying to ask them about their motivation. There's a huge component of curiosity that needs to happen. Asking questions. Something that I love to do with my team members is say, help me understand what this situation is. Help me understand what happened over there. like I saw something happen. What is that? And trying to really understand what the dynamic is, and recognizing that it's not just your experience, but it's the experience of the communities outside of yourself. As an international aid worker, somebody who goes into different countries, and we've all done this, is understanding the cultural sensitivities when you go into a new culture. There are a lot of tools for that. There's a lot of online sources. There's a company, a book publisher called Culture Smart. I've used these books. Every new country I go to, I'll get the Culture Smart book on Nigeria and Ukraine, just to get a very baseline understanding of what's the way of invitation. What's a very general idea of how people operate in business? What are the expectations around time? Time is a cultural element, whether somebody's right on time or not. So it starts to lend itself into understanding where your team is coming from. But I think the most important thing is to ask questions. You can come in with some predefined knowledge and awareness of yourself, but as a leader, it really starts to become about the other, because in order to understand where other people are coming from, you need to really observe. And I also see observation as a form of listening. Your listening skills as a leader need to be really strong. When you're having a conversation or communication with somebody, don't listen to respond, listen to understand. There's a lot of strategies that one can use, but remembering that it's no longer just about you as a leader and as your tone with others, which is extraordinarily important, but also understanding where the other person is coming from, I think will help you to relate to what their experience is, which I think ultimately is a modality of leadership.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Listen to understand. That stuck with me. When you're listening to people, active listening is a core aspect of emotional intelligence. Thank you for sharing your insight with us, and I can see how passionate you are about that. If you notice, our speakers are very passionate about leadership and building leaders. That's why they are the best, and they are sharing deep insights from their heart and their experience with us today. Now, I want us to be more practical and give some more examples. Let's start with you, Mrs. Moses. You've written a lot of articles on leadership, and you've done a lot on leadership and people development, building leaders, raising leaders, even outside of the humanitarian sector, in ministry, in different aspects of life. Can you give us an example on how you have used your emotional intelligence to influence people and to also impact your leadership skills on others? How you've used emotional intelligence to maybe address a situation or challenges in any of your, maybe in any place that you've been working before, just an experience that you share with us on how emotional intelligence is key in influencing and addressing issues.
Thank you so much for this question. So it helps to bring it home as we share real life experiences. Yes, Rachel has done a lot of that, for which I'm so thankful. Really, I remember my first experience in East Africa, a context I've never been before. Going to that place from Nigeria, where relatively the competence level is relatively high uh, here in Nigeria, and taking that mindset to where I went and seeing the the kind of activities to be done and the deep field supervisory roles, support visits. So the first support visit I did to one of the remote deep field locations to assess the health facilities there, the primary health care services there, supporting the population there. I had to, what Rachel said, observation, curiosity, questioning. I showed sincere interest to ask lots of questions. The locally hired staff would travel together. We spent 2 days at that location. I spent enough time asking questions about the context, very volatile, very unstable context. Most of the locals working in that deep field had their families living in another neighboring country that wasn't far from that location, too far from that location. So the risks they take to provide the quality of care and the services to ensure these services are still being provided was something I needed to have profound respect for. I need to have a background information of the conditions under which they are working, the odds that are against them, and the odds they have to defy to ensure that they continue to provide these services. So it helped me a lot in my approach, because when I went there, there were some basic things that were not in place. There were some basic monthly checklists for like the inventory, like the expiry follow up that were not done. But my approach was not that of criticism, was not judgmental, was not, my approach was empathetic, because I had some understanding of the conditions under which they are working. So I went there as somebody who is a friend, somebody who has come to support. I obviously cannot live in that community to play that role. These people are making all the effort. The least I can do is to be as supportive as I can be. So I took that time, those 2 days, to do trainings. I remember they are doing several trainings, basic trainings in simple terms. I used alphabets to codify some of the things, so to help them remember them as mnemonics or acronyms. I introduced a lot of icebreakers, clapping styles, motivating them to laugh and just have fun, and let the training be in a relaxed atmosphere. And I went with visual tools like the monthly checklist, weekly checklist as reminders, pasted them in the dispensary. This is a monthly checklist, this is a dispensary guide to guide you on the steps of what to do. And don't hesitate to call us. You don't wait for your items to get to zero level before you flag. You can communicate, you can have your minimum stock level and let us know ahead of time. This approach really helped, because I learned the some persons have said those people can be hostile, and but I never suffered anything like that, because my approach was different, and that was because I had displayed some emotionally intelligent skill by asking questions, by observing, by listening, by displaying empathy, affirming the current realities, the situations, the constraints they had, admitting the challenges, transportation challenges, getting to that place, the many armed groups around the area, and the conflicts affecting the movement of people and affecting the conditions under which they are working. So that background intelligence helped me to really connect with them. And because we are now friends, I told them, I hope when I come next, I'll be happy when I come to your dispensary. I hope this would have improved, that would have improved. And you see the excitement in their faces, say, oh, don't worry. When you come next, you will be very happy and proud of this. I have not forgotten what I learned, this, and the motivation, the joy. And that way it became a win-win situation. I was able to write a very beautiful report of the outcome, and the follow-up subsequently showed a lot improved. The quick one, secondly, was about a colleague working together, suddenly had an issue with his father's health over the night. We had planned the next day to do a very important activity, and which we needed to really, really give attention to. And suddenly they had to rush his father to the hospital in the night, and he called me from the hospital That was something I could relate with. Years ago, my dad was in the accidental emergency of one of the hospitals. I had to travel to go be with him. I was bedridden and sick for some time. The way someone was gracious enough, I was then serving, doing my youth service, national youth service as a pharmacist in the hospital. The way the head of my department was gracious enough to allow me leave, go travel to see my dad, and I eventually didn't recover from that illness. He passed on. So that experience, I could be gracious enough to say, "Come on, take the time you need and let your father get well. I will make sure I secure the work for everything to go fine, so you don't have to be troubled." That strengthened our relationship. We earned enough trust from that person, such that that emotional bank account, if I will use that word, you can cash in on that. You can cash in on rich deposits of trust to strengthen your relationship as a team, and the person feels supported, they feel you believe in them, they feel they matter. It's not just about the work, their well-being also matters. So this empathy, I've seen it play out and has really bonded the teams I've worked in. Thank you so much for this. Thank you. Let me stop here.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much for sharing that example with us and going deep to also share on your personal experience. I think this has opened our eyes to see the aspect of emotional intelligence and the part that empathy plays in this, and how you can strengthen your relationship, build trust, and also establish influence on the people that you are managing. Thank you very much for sharing. Rachel, do you want to share? Or I have a question. One of our viewers sent in a question on managing. How do you manage narcissistic leaders? Those managers that they build or create a toxic work environment. They are not consistent. They exploit and manipulate. They show arrogance and dominance and entitlement, and they have lack of empathy. They do not want to understand or care about your feelings. How do you navigate and work with such a manager? Before then, can you share with us uh, an example of when you use empathy? Same question. An example.
For starters, Moses, what you said about the emotional bank account and how it lends itself to trust, that is so spot on. And it's so important. You don't need to wait for a crisis to develop emotional intelligence and to practice it with your teams. You don't have to wait for there to be a problem. Like, it's no wahala. Like, you can go and experience it regularly. To me, this also goes into kind of a trauma-informed management and trauma-informed leadership and connection with people, recognizing the context that you're going into is so important. Moses was telling a story about the country that he worked in. I think I worked in the same country where everybody had family outside of the country, and needed to use their days off to, like, all their leave time was in that one part of the year where they, so like they have to go to another country for 2 weeks to see their kids or their spouse, or but recognizing that every day, like, understanding the challenges that they're facing on a daily basis, and exhibiting kind of an understanding and a kindness and kind of a compatibility with that, it builds that emotional bank account, and it does develop trust, so that even if there is a crisis, the team member will know that they can trust you to come to you, because if you haven't developed that, they might not come to you with problems, and that could make issues worse. So that is something that I think is so valid. On a small example, I had a team member in South Sudan who, we had these bereavement policies about about who kind of fits into the bereavement policy. And this staff had lost a family member who was outside of that, but who was still close enough that I could see that it was affecting them. And they had gone to the field in the morning, and I thought, well, they don't look very, like, is everything okay? Yes, everything's fine. They come back and they say, no, everything's not fine. My husband's brother died last night. And I said, what are you doing here? Thank you for telling me. That sounds awful. You clearly have things that you need to do to prepare for that. Please go home. You've been here today. She said it's not in line with and I said, you've done your case management in the camp today. Go home. Please take today. If you need tomorrow, if you think you'll need tomorrow, give me a call. We will work this out however way we need to work this out. And, it's a small act to you as the manager, but it's a huge act for that colleague, because, you can bank a day later, you can have other people kind of support and fill in the gap. Something can have a slight delay. If it's not an emergency, you need to fill the gap. But if it's not so emergency, if it's more of a development context, it's okay. And it means a lot to that person. So I think that's a hugely important thing to do. And trust is just built over time. Trust is built over time, and it's lost in a moment. So, and I think that does lead Victory to the question that you wanted to ask.
Yes, thank you, Rachel. Me from your response. On beyond the policies, we are all humans. So our emotional intelligence, empathy goes beyond the policies. Thank you very much for sharing that. So just let's give a quick run at the question that this viewer is asking. Dealing with a narcissistic manager, no empathy, micromanaging, manipulates. How do you deal with such a manager? Quick run at it, Rachel.
That's a really hard question, and I really hope that the person who wrote this question is not having this experience right now, because it is hugely stressful, and all my empathy to this person. But if they're just asking, So if you are being managed by someone who is a micromanager, no empathy, blaming, creating a toxic environment, it doesn't sound like it's a very emotionally safe space for that team member. And that can be pretty hard to navigate. I would say, depending on how the communication is, because I can see a manager who does this but you're still able to talk with, and I can also imagine a type of manager who is like this, that you have almost no day-to-day face-to-face communications with. But I would make sure that I'm keeping a record of everything, for self-protection. That's kind of the first thing, because reading this question, I can almost see how in one way you might need to make a report eventually. On the other hand, in those one-to-ones, I would keep it pretty succinct. Here's the task. One-to-ones, at least when I'm having one-to-ones with people, I kind of have some formulas. I work with my team members, like, what works for you? This is how I normally do it, but let's let this evolve so that you're giving me information that you need to give me. But it's usually, here's what I've managed to do in the past week, or here's how I'm achieving the goals. Here's my upcoming goals. Here are my blockers. You want to make sure that you're keeping a really clear record of those things, so that when the blame comes out, you can kind of, if there's anything kind of succinct that you can point to, you can point to that. And if it's possible, if you feel it's possible, to sort of help to just understand, how to regulate yourself, so that any action that's towards you is, you're able to self-regulate it, so that if you're being blamed, you don't get triggered somehow, because that can become a very sensitive thing and can lead to more blame. Quite honestly, looking at this question, it looks like there would need to be some sort of intervention at some point. I mean, I've seen managers who maybe are low empathy, or who micromanage a bit, and then you talk to them and say, I feel like you're not letting me do my job. Like, I'd like to just do this, this, and this. And they say, and they're self-aware enough to realize that they're doing that. And they say, thank you for telling me. What would make you feel like you have more control over your program, but if you're in a situation where this is so toxic that you can barely operate, you want to get a record. And if there's a need to report it, then you would need to go through proper channels to report it. But it's also important to carefully kind of get support in other ways, without it becoming like a chain of whispers, without it becoming a game of telephone, because that contributes to a toxic environment. Is there someone safe that you can talk to, either a trusted friend or somebody within the organization? Is there an organizational ombudsman who can support, who doesn't have any sort of like code of conduct responsibility? But, I would say, if the relationship is salvageable and you feel safe enough doing so, to try to address it very carefully. But this question doesn't lend itself to that for me. That question to me feels like that's a code of conduct issue, and that, someone needs to figure out how to protect themselves in that situation.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing. For Mrs. Moses, do you have any inputs on that? And then we wrap up the session.
Thank you so much, Rachel. You have really emphasized all that is needful. I feel a lot of concern for this person. If someone is currently in this situation with the pressure of the humanitarian space, it becomes almost unbearable. And work environment is a day-by-day kind of. So it's really a tough and a difficult situation, and it's almost impossible to keep regulating yourself under this continuous kind of aggressive behavior. And so, as Rachel said, journaling your experience, documenting, keeping a documentary of every detail, every encounter with this person should be very objective, clearly defined. If you are having a one-on-one session, you need to clearly define what that session will entail. Go straight to the point. Be sure that instructions from these persons are as clarified as possible, and you respond and get feedback. And relating that way will help as well, and support informal support, as she mentioned, has really, really worked for a lot of people I know. There are persons that have come to me from different departments other than theirs. I have no supervisory oversight over them, but by way of counsel and support and listening and empathizing, and they are able to overcome. And sometimes these things are with short term, kind of, sometimes 6 months, 3 months, the person leaves. But as she said, the question is really combining a lot of strong words that make us think you might at some point need to do an official reporting or something. When it gets to that stage, you seek counsel and present all the details you have, written details of your encounters, your experiences, instances, and everything, in a very formal way, respecting the organizational hierarchy in doing so. It's very important, and I really hope the person gets help, and I hope this doesn't continue, because the pressure it can bring can have health impacts. If you have a staff health doctor, staff health psychologist, I can also recommend you get support, mental health support, if you think you need to do so. If it's affecting your sleep, affecting you at home, you are not able to concentrate, you are feeling sick or feeling emotionally drained, you may need to see a psychologist, if you have one, like staff health psychologist or staff health doctor clinician, to talk with the person and get confidential support. There are some organizations that have even up to HQ level regional focal persons for psychosocial support. You could reach out anonymously. There are professionals enough to give you some needed support, but don't die in silence. And thank you. And thankfully, you may look back and be grateful that the empathy, the things you will learn by this experience, can help you to be a better manager to others as you move on. I hope you get help soon. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much for enlightening our understanding today. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Francis Moses, for enlightening our understanding and giving us deep insights. We are grateful for sharing from your wealth of experience and knowledge with us on this conversation on navigating leadership within the humanitarian and development sector, and helping us to see how we can balance our interpersonal and our technical skills in our managerial roles. To all our viewers, thank you for tuning in and joining in the conversation. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share this conversation with all stakeholders and people that should join this conversation. This conversation is crucial for aspiring leaders, those in leadership organizations, and those interested in the humanitarian and development space. If you have any questions or need clarification, or you want us to discuss a certain topic, please feel free to reach out to me through the email on your screen. Please send an email to podcastwithdrnansel@gmail.com, and you can feel free to use the comment section. Also, if you want to be in contact with our guest speakers to seek for clarification, ask them questions, or for mentorship, you can reach out to them through their LinkedIn profile or their LinkedIn handles. You can see it on the screen. You can reach out to Pharmacist Moses at Moses Ogenyi, and you can reach out to Rachel Disabo at Rachel Disabo. When you get on LinkedIn, you will see their profile, you'll see their pictures, and you will know that they are the ones. You can reach out to them on that platform. And Pharmacist Moses also has a lot of articles on leadership, and he does a lot of leadership sessions as well. You can get in touch with him and be part of that through his LinkedIn page. Thank you for joining. And if you have any question again and you would want us to talk about, please don't forget to engage in the comment section. I'm Victor Daniel, and I'm your host. Thank you for joining, and bye for now.